Moving north to Kensington is a house whose exterior belies its extravagant interior.
Well, Leighton House was built by the artist Frederic Leighton. He started it in the mid-1860s and he lived here for 30 years. And over that 30 years, he was almost constantly embellishing or extending the house in some way. So it started relatively modest, but by the time he died in 1896, it was referred to as a private palace of art because he'd created this extraordinary environment and it was crammed full of the collections of art that he'd gathered and amassed. The outside of the house, the exterior, is very unassuming. You would have really no idea until you walk through the front door of what you're going to discover. And inside you find this amazing suite of rooms that were designed by him, working closely with his friend, the architect George Aitchison, and then arranged through those rooms are paintings, sculpture, carpets, furniture, all as closely to how he had designed and presented the house as is possible. Leighton's career had started in 1855 when he sent a picture as a complete unknown to the Royal Academy for the summer exhibition. And Prince Albert suggested to Queen Victoria that she should buy it. So she in fact bought his debut picture, which was an amazing start to his career. And he really was on good terms with Queen Victoria throughout his life. She visited the house here in 1859 and she recorded coming to see him in her diary. So sort of key moments in his life were connected in different ways to the royal family. And when he died, Queen Victoria gave her personal blessing that he should be buried in St. Paul's Cathedral, and that was a sort of really a national event. One of the most extraordinary additions that was made to the house was what we refer to as the Arab Hall. So this was built at the end of the 1870s, and it really seems to have been built to accommodate the collection of tiles that Leighton had collected, most of them coming from Damascus, but there were other Turkish tiles involved. And he'd visited these regions and been collecting material from them and had something like 1,000 tiles, and most of them dating from the end of the 16th century, the beginning of the 17th century. So he seems to have built the Arab Hall as a means of displaying and housing that collection of tiles and to show them in a very evocative, atmospheric setting. The centrepiece really of the house was this huge painting studio that was built. It was a very heavily furnished and imposing reception space as well as being a working room. Partly it was to impress, so if you came to call on him, you had the experience of entering this extraordinary house, climbing the grand staircase and then entering this huge studio where he would be at work and would greet you. So part of it was to show what a serious artist he was, but there were practical reasons why it had to be so big, because Leighton often was working on very large pictures, so you simply needed a big room in which you could work on it. When Leighton lived here, he had a very diverse collection of ceramics and textiles and furniture, all arranged through these rooms. And very sadly, all of that was sold at Christie's in the summer after he died and was dispersed all around the world. And we know how far it was dispersed because in 1997, we were contacted by somebody in Melbourne, Australia, who had just bought a cabinet, and inside the drawer was the Leighton sale catalogue from 1896. So they wrote to the museum and sent a photograph of this cabinet saying, does it have any connection with Leighton House? And of course, in all the photographs of the rooms when Leighton lived here, it's immediately recognisable. And in the end, it wasn't presented back to us, but we were given the opportunity of acquiring it. So that particular piece of furniture has literally gone all around the world and come right back to exactly where it was in 1896. We know a great deal about what was originally here, and so we've been able to borrow things and find facsimiles and similar things. And particularly he was interested in ceramics. He had a huge number of Iznik and blue and white china. And so we know in many ways, in fact, that even the decoration and the form of the house, he conceived it to display particular objects and groups of objects. And definitely in the dining room downstairs, that was where he principally had his collection of plates of ceramics on display. It was almost like a little museum. Each room had a character and a theme of what was being displayed within it. The first exhibited piece of sculpture he produced was in 1877, so he was already 47 years old. But the few pieces he did exhibit had a lot of influence on a younger generation of sculptors. And in the room here, in the Silk Room, is one of his sculptures called Needless Alarms, which shows a girl being needlessly alarmed by a frog that's standing at her feet. But it was really essentially as a painter that his career was based. We do a lot of education work. We run every year an annual schools art exhibition, which is open to every school in the borough. And then we have visits from schools to see the Arab Hall and to do art activities within the house. And it's also a great way of introducing the idea of Victorian life and Victorian culture and the place that artists had in that world, and the fact that this house doesn't in any way really conform to what many people think of a struggling artist living in a garret somewhere. This suggests a very different place that artists were able to enjoy when they were successful at that time.